Have you ever thought you could rent a two-bedroom apartment for under $1,000 a month? Relax, it's not a dollhouse. It's not abandoned, not haunted, and not some shady investment opportunity. A real home, real paperwork. And the interesting part? Very few people are paying attention. While many are debating whether to sign up for another 30 years of mortgage payments, there are towns quietly listing homes at prices so low, you might ask, wait, what's going on there? But don't get too excited. There may be a reason behind that price. We're going to walk through 15 towns like that, prices low enough to feel suspicious, and each one comes with a "hold on, seriously?" moment. There's a town where the mayor also runs the local oddities tour, another where the median home price is lower than a used sedan. And trust us, you're not ready for what's waiting for you ahead. First, we have Springfield. No, not the Springfield from The Simpsons. This town sits in Illinois, where you can buy a home for under $110,000, visit Abraham Lincoln's tomb, and still hear people remind each other to be careful heading out in the afternoon near a certain Taco Bell. The upside? You mean besides the ridiculously affordable home prices? The cost of living is about 20% below the national average. Average rent runs under $850 a month. Can you imagine that? For $850, you couldn't even rent a 7.2 square foot room in New York. But here, you could live comfortably in a studio or even a two-bedroom if you really search carefully. The job market is largely centered around government, education, and healthcare, stable fields, but slow growing. Springfield is affordable, rich in historical value, and in theory, you might even run into the state governor at a local gas station. Are you starting to think this sounds a little too good to be true? Well, we haven't mentioned the downsides. Springfield doesn't carry the energy of a bustling capital city. It leans more toward an old industrial feel, where work jackets and pickup trucks are more common than modern glass towers. Life here is fairly traditional, sometimes even reserved in certain viewpoints. Many residents were born and raised in central Illinois, so the cultural landscape isn't especially diverse. That creates a strong sense of community, but it can also mean the city lacks the sense of momentum and reinvention that younger people often look for. For highly specialized careers, especially in tech or network engineering, local opportunities are fairly limited. The city isn't a headquarters hub for major corporations, so senior-level roles are usually located elsewhere. Without remote work options, income growth can be harder to achieve. Some people are fortunate enough to keep online jobs, earning far more than the local cost of living, and that's often what makes life here financially make sense. Plus, someone with experience living there so complained about the car-centric, highways through downtown, bad sidewalks, and god-awful public transit. Linked to above, the downtown is habitually barren of pedestrians. Is that something you can't compromise? Let us know in the comment. That said, to be fair, there are peaceful neighborhoods around Springfield that are well suited for raising a family if you can secure stable employment. Perspective matters. For someone single, the lack of buzz and fast-moving opportunity might feel like a major drawback, but for those who prioritize stability and staying close to family, this place could still hold its own kind of value. In Weirton, West Virginia, the average home price is actually lower than a brand new Toyota Camry. And with it comes a whole inheritance of Steeltown history thicker than any long-winded story at a family dinner. There was a time when this seemed like the kind of town where steel flowed as steadily as morning coffee, and high school football was practically a local religion. Sitting along the Ohio River, Weirton technically belongs to the greater Pittsburgh metro area, but if you tell that to locals, they might not be too thrilled about it. The town still carries that classic working-class charm, family diners, porch culture, streets that feel like faded 1960s postcards. The median home price is around $112,000. Sounds like a deal, right? Then the steel industry slowed down. The downturn of the 1980s still seems to echo today. Job growth at times has felt nearly flat. The population has gradually declined over the decades, and roughly 18% of residents are over 65. That might be perfect if you enjoy peaceful bingo nights. The crime rate is relatively low, that's a plus. So, is a quiet place like this completely without drawbacks? Well, you know, nothing is ever entirely perfect. In this town's case, wages aren't particularly high. Median household income sits around $45,000, and that's assuming full-time, stable employment. If you're piecing together part-time work, you may need to budget a little more carefully. In Weirton, you might sometimes feel like even the GPS gets confused, as if it's trying to make a left turn into 1,947. You'll find 3 barbershops, 2 bowling alleys, but not a single Starbucks. Want a fancy latte? Your options may be a gas station or a straightforward black coffee. Is that a downside? That probably depends on who's watching. Another town from Illinois. Decatur is the kind of town where you can buy a 3-bedroom house for under $90,000 and maybe still have enough left over to stock your freezer for a year. And yes, there's usually a reason for that. Welcome to Decatur, Illinois. Home to about 68,000 residents, surrounded by endless fields of corn and a near-serious obsession with soybeans. The city is often called the soybean capital of the world, and if you drive past the processing plants, you'll probably understand why. There seem to be more agricultural facilities here than trendy coffee shops in Los Angeles. The median home price hovers just above $90,000. The cost of living is roughly 25–26% below the national average. Rent can often come in under $800 a month. You might be wondering, at prices like that, why don't more people move here? Why stay in expensive places like New York or California? If you're asking that question, hit subscribe because we completely understand that feeling. That being said, crime statistics during certain periods have trended higher than the national average, which may be why some residents make a habit of double-checking their car doors, even in church parking lots. The job market is primarily centered around manufacturing and agriculture. Traditional, stable industries, but perhaps not dynamic enough to attract waves of tech engineers or digital professionals seeking fast-paced environments. As one resident once put it rather bluntly, yes, it's affordable, just some days you might not want to leave your windows wide open. So, here's the question. Would you trade big city energy and broader opportunity for a lighter mortgage and a quieter street? Let us know what you think below. Flint is one of the very few places in America where home prices are lower than your college textbook bill. And yes, you've definitely heard the city's name before, just probably not in a glossy travel brochure. Flint has a reputation. Mention it, and people immediately think of the water crisis. And well, that's understandable. But what if I told you the city has been quietly rebuilding, and home prices here are so low they almost don't sound real? The median home price is around $69,000. The cost of living is about 27% below the national average. Rent runs roughly $700 a month. The job market is mostly centered around healthcare, education, and city contracts, so don't expect a Silicon Valley vibe. As for safety, we'll get there. Brace yourself. Flint's reputation is rough, and not just because of the water story. The violent crime rate is several times higher than the national average. Property crime is also very high. This is the kind of city where a home security system isn't a bad idea. You can buy an entire house for less than the down payment on a Tesla. But in return, you're stepping into a city that still carries scars of broken trust, aging infrastructure, and a national punchline label that hasn't completely faded. But here's where it gets interesting. Some parts of Flint are slowly becoming oddly cool. Artists, developers, and even a few real hipsters are moving into renovated downtown buildings. The city has mural tours. And believe it or not, the coffee shops are actually decent. Toledo is one of those places where you can buy a house for about $80,000, walk to a nationally ranked zoo, and still trip over a cracked sidewalk next to an old movie theater that's been closed for years. Toledo, the Glass City. Once an industrial pride of the Great Lakes region, now it feels like a budget blend of grit, revival, and surprisingly good food. The median home price is around $115,000. Rent ranges from $750 to $850 per month. The cost of living is about 22% below the national average. The upside? A world-class zoo, a minor league hockey team, and neighbors who'll help shovel your driveway and then invite you in for a bowl of hot chili. But like other towns on this list, Toledo has recorded violent crime rates above the national average, and property-related incidents happen fairly often. Not always severe, but enough to remind you to lock up even the trash bin on your porch. The job market mainly revolves around education, healthcare, and traditional blue-collar work. You might not get rich quickly here, but you might actually own a house in your own name. Some argue that's enough to be considered rich. Welp, I guess everyone has their own definition of wealth, right? So Team Toledo or hard pass. Toledo is affordable, stubborn, and full of surprises. Kind of like your dad's old recliner. Not flashy, but if it comes with free parking and a view of a glass factory, it might just be worth thinking about. Scranton, the only place where your neighbor knows 3 things: your name, your business, and exactly how cheap your house was. Scranton. Yes, that's Scranton. The city once famous for The Office, Joe Biden's origin story, and enough coal history to host a small-scale steampunk convention. And now, a classic blue-collar city trying to reinvent itself on what feels like a modest budget. The median home price sits just under $110,000. A two-bedroom rents for around $800 a month. The cost of living is roughly 20% below the national average. The job market revolves around healthcare, logistics, and maybe a few hard-to-explain remote jobs your neighbor's nephew is doing on his laptop. The upside? Friendly people. Local food, that's interesting, in a humble way. Homes that don't require you to sell a body part to afford them. The downside? You have to embrace the coal dust and old brick aesthetic and be reminded daily that The Office wasn't actually filmed here. Let's talk about Scranton roads. It feels like someone paved them during an earthquake and then just left it at that. You might hit a pothole deep enough to make your car question its life choices. Parking? Parallel, uphill, tilted, and right next to a fire hydrant. Perfect. So, you end up walking 5 blocks while your grocery bags slowly give up. If you move here, you might want to invest in a compact shopping cart. Rochester is the kind of city where you can buy a 4-bedroom house for under $100,000 and immediately lose feeling in your face from lake effect snow. Life here might not be so bad, if the cold never bothered you anyway. This upstate New York City has been on a real economic roller coaster. But here's the interesting part. It's quietly becoming a low-cost refuge for creatives, remote workers, and anyone tired of paying $3,000 a month to live in a shoebox in Manhattan. The median home price is about $107,000. A 2-bedroom rents for around $900 a month. The cost of living is roughly 20-25% below the national average. Crime rates can still be concerning in certain neighborhoods, with some areas reporting levels nearly double the national average. Every place on Earth has its pros and cons, right? There are highly rated universities, a strong healthcare system, and surprisingly good local food. After major manufacturing corporations left, Rochester's economy shrank significantly. But lately, it seems to be finding its footing again through smaller tech firms, healthcare expansion, and a growing freelance crowd. Urban renewal is touching parts of downtown, though mostly in select pockets. If you look closely, it feels like an emotional trade-off. You get space, affordability, and maybe even a backyard. But you also get winters that test your mood in very real ways. Rochester sees over 100 inches of snow a year, and the sun sometimes disappears like it owes someone money. You save on housing, but invest heavily in boots, light therapy lamps, and road salt. Lots of salt. If Elsa from Frozen had a hometown, it might be Rochester. And that probably tells you everything you need to know about the weather. In St. Louis, you can buy a house for around $60,000, though it might come with an unexpected mark on the wall and a neighbor everyone knows by name but no one wants to ask too many questions about. St. Louis is a city of contrasts. The Gateway Arch, blues music, baseball, toasted ravioli, and at the same time, one of the most affordable housing markets among major U.S. metros. The median home price is about $110,000. Yes, it sounds hard to believe, but it is what it is. Average rent is around $925 per month. The cost of living is roughly 18% below the national average. The job market, if you look closely, appears fairly stable in sectors like healthcare, education, and aerospace. Here's the thing. You can save a significant amount living in St. Louis, but careful research is essential. Choose the wrong zip code, and you might find yourself getting used to emergency sirens, broken glass, and plastic chairs permanently stationed on porches year-round. Choose the right neighborhood, and you might smile at your bank account while sipping a $3 craft beer on your own porch, watching your property value rise faster than doorstep deliveries. But this city has its own darker corners. Some areas feel like a mini Brooklyn, while others resemble the backdrop of a post-apocalyptic video game. It's not just across the tracks. In some places, even the tracks themselves seem misplaced. Would you accept a higher level of uncertainty in exchange for lower rent and outstanding barbecue? Drop Arch Life or Hard Pass in the comments below. Detroit Motor City. Once the global hub of engines and assembly lines, it now has entire blocks priced like items in a vending machine. Yet behind the empty city headlines, there is still a pulse. A strange, gritty, challenging pulse. When you look up home prices here, you might be stunned by the median figure of around $66,000. Can you believe it? With that kind of money, you get a backyard, a garage, and a sense of personal freedom. but you might also consider installing window bars and buying a backup generator. On paper, you may feel wealthy until the Wi-Fi cuts out because the copper wiring on the utility pole has disappeared. Downtown has clearly changed. Tech startups, trendy lofts, boutique coffee shops with names like Clutch or Grind. But walk just 2 blocks, and the scenery may feel like something out of a post-apocalyptic game. Still, if you're bold, resilient, or simply unconcerned about what relatives might think, Detroit could be the capital of bootstrap-style entrepreneurial dreams. Picture this. You buy a $5,000 house, repaint it, grow tomatoes in the backyard. The air carries hints of old vinyl records and grilled kielbasa. You bike past murals with Motown playing in your headphones. You feel like a pioneer until a raccoon nearly the size of a bulldog chases you around your trash bins. Housing in Detroit can cost less than an RV in Arizona, but you may need an urban survival handbook and possibly a tetanus shot, just to be safe. Well, for some reasons, we don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Pittsburgh, from Steel City to Tech City. Once called Smokestack USA, it's now home to Google, Uber, and Duolingo. But what's interesting is that despite this transformation, the cost of living doesn't seem to have received the same update. Average rent is around $1,150 per month for a 2-bedroom apartment. Still cheaper than a studio we once rented in a building, so tilted it felt like it was reconsidering gravity. Beyond these almost unbelievable prices, can you guess Pittsburgh's secret weapon? It's underrated. Major league sports teams, beautiful parks, respected universities, yet outside the Rust Belt, not many people talk about it. Another thing people wonder about is the weather. Rain, fog, snow, and sunshine sometimes all in the same afternoon. And the hills? Let's just say the GPS occasionally seems to sigh and say, good luck. So if you move here, what do you gain and what do you trade off? You get charm, culture, and your own backyard. But you also inherit a street system that keeps your brain fully engaged and a postcard skyline until it disappears into the fog. Picture a cool fall morning, mist drifting over the Allegheny River. You're holding coffee from a century-old diner, crossing one of more than 400 bridges, and your biggest problem of the day is a parking meter with personality. Not bad for a city with a postcard skyline and rent prices that feel like it's still 2009. If you're a fan of the one and only, Memphis, the birthplace of rock and roll, of ribs that can derail any diet plan, and home prices so low Zillow might ask if you're joking. This is the kind of city that makes you pause and think, wait, what's the catch? Rent is often around $1,000, give or take. As long as your landlord isn't planning early retirement off your lease, you can almost always find a good deal. Crime rates are relatively high, the kind where you might consider sending your Amazon packages to a friend's house. But here's the interesting part. Memphis has soul, literally and figuratively. Deep musical roots. Food so good it feels against the rules. And yes, there are practical challenges that come with it. If you're okay with summers that feel like a steam room, older air conditioners humming non-stop, and drivers who treat red lights as suggestions, you could potentially build equity instead of burning cash on rent. Speaking of Memphis drivers, imagine Grand Theft Auto, but no one's wearing a seatbelt and everyone thinks turn signals are just a rumor. We once saw someone doing donuts in a Walmart parking lot while a police officer stood by, waving like he was watching a show. You'll be fine if your brakes are fresh and your reflexes are as quick as Elvis in his prime. In McAllen, you can buy a house for under $100,000 and still have money left to launch a taco truck empire, sitting along the U.S.-Mexico border. This sun-soaked city may be one of the most affordable small metros in America that still comes with solid Wi-Fi. The crime rate is surprisingly low for a border city. And yes, there's even a Target. What a surprise! But here's the interesting part. McAllen has a strange kind of dual personality. On one side, palm trees, walkability, and a healthcare system ranked among the best in the state. On the other, an economy often described as okay-ish, like that cousin who still drives for DoorDash but insists he's seriously investing. You see, if you live here, you'll likely save money. It's peaceful. Almost too peaceful, like a Hallmark movie setting, just with an extra layer of Texas humidity. But here's a heads up, you might go through 7 shirts before noon because of the heat. And don't even mention the mosquitoes, unless you consider them part of your character-building journey. The heat here is something else. It feels like the sun is trying to prove a point. You don't walk to your car, you sprint, hoping your shoe soles don't melt. The air conditioner works like it's heading into battle every single day. And the humidity, without a dehumidifier, it's like you're drinking the air. Picture a lazy afternoon. 5 o'clock. You're sitting in a rocking chair on your porch. A tamale truck honks as it rolls by. The air smells like lime and tortillas. And you just paid off your house in cash? Sounds pretty good, right? Tucked along the Missouri River like it's hiding from inflation, Yankton looks like it was photoshopped straight into a Midwest travel app. Think steamboats, quiet strolls through downtown, and neighbors who wave with their whole hand, not just one finger. Even if many people couldn't point it out on a map, hear us out. Crime rates are low, roughly half the national average depending on the year. The job market is relatively stable, mostly in healthcare, manufacturing, and occasionally those internal referral opportunities where someone from the local veterans hall might connect you. Quality of life? Quiet, low pressure, and just different enough to stay interesting. But what no one tells you is that this peaceful river town has its own special features, like extreme seasonal weather. Or the fact that almost everyone under 30 moves to Sioux Falls the moment they realize there's no Trader Joe's here. The vibe falls somewhere between a Norman Rockwell painting and a Facebook debate about deer hunting season. Nightlife in Yankton might mean a gas station selling fresh-baked pizza. There's one bar that doubles as a karaoke stage, dartboard arena, and occasional unofficial marriage counseling center because all three can happen in a single evening. Compared to Street Louis, Yankton feels less like dodging major risks and more like avoiding squirrels crossing the road. Not too shabby, right? If Utah were a band, Salt Lake City would be the lead singer. And Price? The guy in the back playing a slightly rusty harmonica, no ego, and no rent to worry about. You get that metaphor? Please say yes. Anyway, you can buy a house in Price, Utah for less than a single year of rent in Los Angeles, but good luck finding a sushi spot that's still open after 8 p.m. The crime rate is lower than average unless you count petty theft or mountain lions showing up near residential areas. Yes, you heard that right. Mountain lions are a familiar presence in many Utah towns. In southern Utah, a single mountain lion's territory can stretch across several hundred square miles. The rocky, craggy terrain and dense forests make ideal hiding spots. They're solitary animals, except during breeding season, which can happen any time of year. So, good luck with that. Another thing no one tells you, living in Price feels like stepping into a time machine that occasionally lags. Peaceful, yes, but the internet can be spotty. Nightlife is close to non-existent. On one hand, you save money like crazy. Low taxes, cheap homes, rent that seems unaware it's 2026. On the other hand, your social calendar might revolve around, did you hear what the mayor said at Denny's this morning? Your bank account grows steadily. Your tolerance for a lack of drama? Maybe not at the same pace. You see, in San Francisco, $1 million might get you a 700 square foot apartment and a neighbor named Crypto Chad. In Price, you might land a 4-bedroom house with a backyard bigger than your ego. The first thing you might notice is that Eagle Pass today doesn't look exactly like the small town it was in the late 90s. It still holds on to its border town character, but it has gradually grown into more of a true small city. Not explosive growth, more like steady change. Enough that returning residents might need a moment to readjust. The median home price sits around $89,000. Rent for a 2-bedroom usually falls between $650 and $750, as long as you don't mind the occasional live music drifting through the neighborhood. Food remains a clear strength. Mexican and Tex-Mex spots show up on nearly every corner. If you're after something more traditional, many still say the options across the border feel even more authentic. On the Texas side, local staples like Gauna's have maintained consistent quality over the years. Another interesting detail is how the community operates. Many shops, services, even small vendors are more active on Facebook than on official websites. Compro y Vendo groups see daily listings and promotions. Convenient, right? Compared to larger hubs like San Antonio or Dallas, life moves noticeably slower here. Someone who spent years in the Phoenix metro area once shared that returning to Eagle Pass required a real adjustment. You won't find endless entertainment, shopping variety, or late-night dining options. There aren't dozens of choices for every need. In return, Eagle Pass offers something many crowded cities seem to have lost: unhurried time. Mornings might begin with coffee on your porch or at a small downtown cafe. Weekends often revolve around simple gatherings, local markets, or outdoor festivals, especially during cooler months when the weather feels just right. The pace isn't rushed. No one is pushing. 15 towns. 15 price tags that might make you look twice and wonder what you may have overlooked all these years. While many places continue racing toward decades-long mortgages, there are still communities where owning a home appears within reach for an average household. Maybe it's not just about affordability, but about peace of mind and a sense of control over your own life. So, if the opportunity came up, would you consider moving to a small town to own a home at prices like these, or would you choose to stay in a major city? Share your thoughts below.